Hi, everyone. We're starting off a bit differently today in order to turn our focus to the people behind the live streaming platform that we use called Restream. If you didn't know, Restream was founded in Ukraine in 2015. We received a message last week from Restream's co-founder and CEO, Alex Kahuta, letting the Restream community know that they have relocated their Ukrainian-based employees and families, which is about 1/3 of their workforce, to safety and have donated $100,000 to the Red Cross Ukraine. They also shared a list of Ukraine-based and international organizations that are assisting those affected, which we'll share in the comments. Our thoughts are with them, their families, and the Ukrainian people. Okay, I'm your host, Drew Neiser, live from my home studio in New York City. We started without our usual fancy music, so I'm gonna try to get our energy back going. But let's face one reality, which is there is no shortage of quality content vying for our attention of your target audience. I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of content out there. For example, according to Orbit Media in 2021, there were 7.7 million new blog posts per day. Now, on average, those were 1,269 words each, which means there are about 10 billion new words in the market every single day. That's 10 billion. You heard me correctly. It's almost incomprehensible. Needless to say, most of those words, like other forms of content, are being ignored by Google, which pretty much guarantees that they will be ignored by your audiences. So here's the good news. Cutting through all of this clutter is not easy, but is definitely doable. And one way of doing that, and it's worked consistently, is by conducting proprietary market research and building multi-channel campaigns around this research, which we're going to be talking about today with two amazing CMOs. And with that, let's get right to it. Let's bring in Denise Fu, Broady, CMO of Appian and star of episode 43 of Renegade Marketers Unite and episode 14 of this show. Hello, Denise. Welcome back.
Hi, Drew. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to this.
I'm excited. It's always fun to talk to you. And I know you're a big fan of content marketing. Can you sort of give a little sense of your overall approach to content, the strategy, and the role it plays in your marketing mix at Appian?
Absolutely. Look, as you've heard me say many times, content is king. And without content, you cannot run campaigns, you cannot drive thought leadership, you cannot do demand generation, you cannot even create, awareness. And I love when I think about content, it's combination. There's product content that you're filling in for the gaps of your solutions overall area. It's more around basic research, right, to understand what the portfolio offering looks like. And then there's the whole thought leadership piece, which can be tied beautifully, especially around market research. And combination, I'm proud of two pieces that we did last year. You are part of one of the pieces around the state of low-code developers, and the second piece on the disruption of IT in the business that we co-sponsored with the Economist. So for us, putting the thought leadership piece into content with a market research angle is definitely a great way to seed with our customers as well as create awareness, especially in our space, since mainstreaming the low code area has not really been the case until this year. If you ask the average person, oh, what is low code? They will not know as part of that. So we have quite a bit of work to not only educate our market, but to really help the buyers also understand what does it take to really be considered a low code platform as part of it?
Okay, there's a lot going on there that
Mhm.
I want to unpack, and yeah, we enjoyed working with you on that as you described it. But and we've done a couple of studies together when you were at Workforce and we did it Appian, and so knowing that the the way, and you talked a little bit about this, but let's dive in a little bit more. There's something about doing your own research that has specific value. Because, like, look, it's easy to create a blog post, right? We can all have an opinion, we can go find out content. But when you're doing market research, you're sort of stepping up a little bit. It's obviously part of your mental playbook when you think about solving certain challenges that you face from a marketing standpoint. Let's talk about that. Because, I mean, again, Workforce, now Appian.
Yeah.
Um,
So you can do, as you mentioned, look, you can do your own market research. I think the benefit of always doing a market research with a third party is to gain that a different additional perspective, right? I love aggregating survey data, and this is one of the areas that Drew we've worked on, as you mentioned, a couple of times already between Workforce as well as Appian. And I think that when you're trying to shift mindset, it's also good to come in and actually have that survey data. You know, when I started to come into Appian, I was not an expert around low code, and I was just curious on, what the landscape looked like and what did people that are doing traditional coding or high code think of acquiring skills in low code. And the interesting part for us was we knew that by 2024 there would be 38 million developers incremental that are needed in order to drive all of the needs around the business as well as the workforce. And for us, when you're developing on low code, you can accelerate your development, 10x. So could we help bring more developers into and do what we call career shifters, right? From high code to low code. And part of the question I really wanted to understand is how much happier are low code developers versus high code developers? Do they actually make more money? And do they feel an impact on their business? I had a little bit of a point of view around it, but I really wanted to seed it with data. And so the survey angle is just such a great way to come in and see the information and have a point of view that's actually backed up by facts and data that you're collecting as part of the market research.
And what's so interesting is, there's a serious business growth challenge, and you mentioned it, which is, and so that this research helps you sort of begin to focus on, which is that there's going to be a lot more low code development, so we're going to need a lot more low coders. So as a result, it would be helpful to know what low coders think about being low code. I had to laugh when we talk about low code and high code, because it's like, until there was online, there was never offline, right?
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
it's the exact parallel. So until there was low code, there was never high code. There was just coders. And so but it was a really interesting study. I mean, you learned some really interesting things that I think in some ways surprised all of us, and it confirmed some things, but the great part of it was there were some surprises in there. Talk a little bit about what did you learn about low coders and how that sort of enabled you to sort of tell the story that you hope to be able to tell.
Yeah, I was surprised. As you know, we iterated this on many times as the data was coming in. I was shocked to see that, 82%, for example, of the low code developers felt that they had higher earning potential. By the way, over half of them were happier than traditional low code developers. But it's not only the data. The interesting part is that, and Drew, you know this because as we were iterating the market research, what came out of it was also a great theme for us to build on from a developer marketing perspective, right? We actually tagline as part of the survey, to know low code is to love low code. And actually that came out as part of the survey. It wasn't a hypothesis or anything that we came in as part of the research. It just came out based on the output and what the data set told us. So it gave us a beautiful theme to really come in and actually add this as part of our developer marketing strategy.
And I'm just, as you're saying that, I mean, it is a great line, and but it also reminds me, as an offshoot of this, if you do this research, one of the things is, you try to think of what the headlines might be, but this became the headline that came out of it. And the great thing about having a headline when you come out of it is then you have this sort of platform that you can tell the story. You sort of have the hook for the research, because it's one of those headlines where you go, oh, that's interesting. What don't I know, right? And what does love mean? And hadn't really ever thought about those two words. Wait, love and code? No, really? So I just, again, it's fun that this is where, to me, the art and science of marketing, because in theory, there's a lot of science. You're doing research, you're asking questions, you're doing smart, and we'll call it legitimate research methodology. There's a word for that, but I'm not going to come up with it. And then you're taking those findings and you're turning them into language that that the people that you want to read the research will find attractive and interesting. You need a hook, I guess, is a long way of saying it, and it's good when one comes out.
Yeah, and Drew, you know this, and you talk about this all the time, which is regardless of your doing market research or any content that you're creating, it's all about, what does the story tell you? What is the storyboard? How do you engage whichever persona you're working with, right? And for us, the low code market research itself gave us really some more data set in order to not only better target developers, but think about how do we better engage with them. And as an output of this, looking at different things of restructuring our certification as part of the process. How do we come in and make it more consumable as part of this? So there's many cascading things that happen as part of it. And I think that, the question always is, what does the story tell you?
And again, this is the part that I love about having proprietary, newsworthy market research as part of your B2B playbook. Is if you do the research right and it's important enough to the business, there are going to be a lot of uses for it, right? I mean, just so people know, Appian is in the low code business, right? You need more low code developers. And so having this research about what low code developers versus high code developers think about low code was not only important in terms of recruiting low code. So now you have something for your HR and recruitment team, but also just for the people that you're going out and you're selling. There's information for multiple groups, and there's multiple ways of using the thing. But part of that gets back to research design and all sorts of other technical things. All right. Well, I could go on, and I know you could, but let's bring on Dan Lowden, who is the CMO of Human Security, otherwise known as Human. Note the T-shirt. And Dan is the star of episode 174 of Renegade Marketers Unite and episode 11 of this show. So, Dan, welcome back.
Thank you, Drew, and always good to have these conversations with you. And it's great to see Denise again. We're long-term friends, so bringing the group together here. Love it.
Oh, me too. And we'll all be together diving into this topic. But let's talk about your overall approach to content marketing, and then what role it plays for Human, and then we can talk about research after that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, content marketing is huge. Human is a cybersecurity company, and we serve enterprises, ad tech firms, marketers, and we protect them from sophisticated bot attacks and fraud that's impacting the entire customer experience, right? So we create content a lot of it based off of the research that we publish. You talked about the length of research reports, blogs, and things like that. But we publish something that I think gives a lot of value to the customers we serve. And a lot of it is based off of what our threat intelligence analysts and our data scientist folks find, discover, and it's usually bad actors or cyber criminals doing bad things. And then we're in a position to work with the ecosystem like Google, Facebook, the FBI, Department of Justice, to work together to take down those cyber criminal organizations, to disrupt their operations, and in some cases actually put some of those bad actors in prison based off of all the bad things that they have done. So what we do is we pull together all that content and then we publish it. And we publish it to educate the market about what is happening out there in the real world, what they should do to protect themselves. And it has a profound impact. And we create a kind of business version of research that we publish that's shorter, more succinct, more understandable, and then a very technical version of that for the technical teams. And because we take both approaches, we can really serve our customers well. And the impact it has is tremendous. And, it's a way for us to tell our story, how we can help customers and educate them on the problem, and that there's something that they can do about it, that we can do about it together. And, we call it collective protection. And this research supports those efforts. And that's why it works for us very, very well.
And it's because you're sort of in it, you have this wealth of information. There's also, this proprietary market research where, you're trying to identify, perhaps help people see a problem that they might not be able to see, right? I'm curious. So let's talk about it. And you had done, you did at least a study before, you and I worked together on a study, but are the objectives a little bit different when you're approaching, the proprietary market research that, that like we did, different than a white paper or a long blog post? And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and that's the important part of this. It was great working together with your group. We created a marketing fraud benchmarking report where we went out and did a big survey of performance marketers and CMOs to get a feel for, are they aware of these type of risk? And are they aware of the impacts of marketing fraud on all the advertising that they do, all the campaigns that they do? And we wanted to do this research to get an understanding of, one, are they aware of the problem? Two, what are the pain points that they are seeing? Three, are any of them taking actions to go protect themselves and protect the dollars that they spend? And we wanted to learn a lot about the current state of where they were. And it ranged from some companies and some people who responded to the survey had no idea this was happening. Others sensed there were some things going on their websites and things like that didn't really make sense. And then there were others who were saying, yeah, there's a big problem and we have to go figure out how to solve it. So some of the results were amazing. 43% of them responded saying, hey, we're suspicious some bad things are happening on our website. And so there's fraud happening. And 2/3 responded that they have had experienced some type of marketing fraud impacting their customer experience. So we learned a lot, and we learned their pain points. We learned what their priorities were and where they needed help the most. And that was really valuable.
So I think, we've done a good job of sort of describing what the output is and how we're doing it. I think for folks who haven't gone through this process before, there's a lot of little nuances and sort of tricks of the trade, if you will. And I think it might be helpful to hear the process that you went through to sort of get, once you decide you want to do this, what kinds of things, or what do you think other CMOs and marketers should know in order to, sort of make sure that this research works and is as effective as possible?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And it's a long process, and it's important that you do this right and you do it well and you do it with integrity. And it starts with, okay, what is the key theme of the research? And, what are you trying to discover? What are you trying to learn? What are you trying to educate the market on? And then kind of build around that theme a set of questions that you think you want to ask those marketers to really be able to, peel back the onion and get deeper and deeper into this. And it's hard. It is really hard. We went back and forth on those 20 some questions, probably for, a good 30, 45 days, Drew. And the way you ask the questions and the options that you give them to respond to the questions, you have to think through every single word to make sure you're not trying to put bias into the questions. You're not trying to, lead them down a path. You want to discover what they really think. And that's the way you're going to get the best result out of this. And then you have to figure out, okay, who are we going to try to engage with? What titles, what geographies, over what time frame? Do you have to put some type of incentive in place to get people to respond to it? And then, once you decide on all that and the survey goes out, that's when the real work begins, because then the responses start to come in. You start to learn. There's, a lot of variables that go into what you're trying to pull, and summaries you're trying to pull from the survey results. And then, try to put it into a format and a report like we've published that really is meaningful, to educate the market about this problem and to tell the story that these respondents told you. And again, try to do that without any bias whatsoever, just to really try to tell the story, and have it be impactful. And that's the goal. And we're very, very satisfied with the results of this marketing fraud benchmarking report. A lot of people responded positively to it. And we got a lot of great responses from marketers, but we also got a lot of great responses from the media on it as well, because it's a hot topic.
And I want to, before we get on to that, because I think that's so interesting, there were a lot of things, but as I recall, and I wanted to put a punctuation point on it, that you start with a hypothesis that you're thinking that might be there, but you have to be careful, as you describe it, that you just, it's not simply about asking questions so the only way they can answer it gives a result that you want, because it will be invalid, and people will usually be able to see through that. But you do start with hypotheses. I think that's an important thing. And this question design process that you are describing, I think is really important that people understand. So first draft, second draft, third draft, you're working through it, but then you get product experts in there. You then get, and you also, you even when you program it, you start to get other people to get their input and take it. And you realize, no, we didn't ask that one quite right. And I think one of the things that we did, if we didn't, that we always do, we actually have a research scientist behind the scenes to just make sure that our methodology is 100% legit, because, you could skip a step, you could, like just simple things where you're asking people certain things, the order that you put it in can create a bias. So anytime that you can rotate, you should, right? Those kinds of things. And that's what, we're really good at, I think, at helping sort of construct these things. But, when it comes to the absolute research scientists, you want a PhD behind the scenes. I'm just telling you right now, folks who are thinking about this, it helps because at the end of the day, this is something that needs to have, as you said, integrity.
Exactly. And, we didn't have that knowledge, right? So to work with an organization like yourself and have all those really smart people in the background that do this all the time, that really know what to look for, those subtleties to make sure we do not try to include any bias into the results whatsoever, was really important. We learned a ton through the process about how to do this and how to do this better. And it sets us up better for the future.
And, one of the things that, it's just so funny, the iterations that I'm thinking about, because we did the same thing. If Denise were on, it would be the same conversation. And this is a learning experience as you go through it, because you really think through the problem. And one of the things I'm going to sort of suggest to folks that hasn't come up yet, but you alluded to it, this ended up generating press for you.
Yeah.
One of the exercises that we go through together before then is to sort of think what the headlines would be.
Yeah, no,
right?
Absolutely. Right. We had a thought about what the responses would be. But the response was dramatically higher than we thought. The percentage of companies being impacted, their campaigns being impacted, was much higher than we expected. When 2/3 of the marketers came back and said, yeah, this is a problem, and we think it's a lot bigger than we thought it was going to be, and it's impacting the customer experience, it really kind of opened our eyes. And then what we did simultaneously, we did a consumer survey and asked a similar question, especially around the holidays. Are bots impacting your holiday shopping experience, right? High value, low inventory products. You're competing against bots to buy that inventory. How does that impact you as a consumer? And we got a lot of great responses around that to say, hey, if bots are buying the inventory and I can't get what I want to buy for the holidays, I may not go back to that retailer again because I did not have a great experience. So you combine the B2B survey we did with the B2C survey that we did, and it really, really gave us a complete picture. And when we shared that with the media, the response was amazing.
Right. And I'm going to add one more punctuation point, and then we're gonna move on or take a little break. But one thought as you were speaking about, so if you were in a market that is immature in the sense that many times you're solving a problem that your customers may not realize they have. And there is nothing like market research to help demonstrate. And by the way, this approach, I mean, when we launched Toughbook, a long time ago, we did a proprietary research study on the actual cost of notebook desks. Because at the time, there were a lot of businesses there was no such thing as a ruggedized notebook category. So you do the research and you get IDC to quantify and say it's $750 billion of business cost. So in that, then you can sort of say, well, so for an extra $500, buy a ruggedized laptop for anybody who's out in the field. This is where market research, again, has a value. And this was certainly for you. You were addressing a problem that a lot of marketers didn't realize they had.
That's true. So, and that's why this was important, because this is how their peers think about it, right? We asked over 100 and I think 30 some of marketing leaders what their view of this was. So to get those type of results, marketers want to hear from other marketers. They want to understand, hey, what are the challenges that you're facing? And when you make them aware of this problem, and it's a painful problem, right? It's a problem like, hey, I'm spending $1 on marketing or $1 million on marketing, and 30-40% of it is going to waste. That's a hard discussion to have with a marketer. But when you do this type of research and then the results come back to say, hey, if you fix this problem, you're going to get a substantially higher ROI and higher conversion rates. And you may end up becoming the hero of the company because you drove a lot more business because you took fraud out of the story. It really helps them educate them on what they can do about it. And that's why these surveys are so important. And to have this story come from their peers, that's very, again, done with integrity.
Very cool. Okay. We're gonna pivot for a second, and I'm going to talk about CMO Huddles. This is our presenting partner, sponsor. And so launched in 2020, CMO Huddles is an invitation-only subscription service that brings together an elite group of CMOs to share, care, and dare each other to greatness. One CMO described Huddles as timely conversations with smart peers in a trusted environment, while another called it a cross between an expert workshop and a therapy session. Now, this isn't really fair to bring on Dan and Denise to talk about this, because Dan and Denise have been involved in Huddles from really pretty much from the beginning or before the beginning. They are on the advisory board. But since you're here, maybe if you could share, Denise, maybe share your perspective on CMO Huddles.
Yeah, I just really think that there could not be a better platform to learn from each other. I look forward to it. Once a month, I huddle with the other CMOs and whatever topics that we're having, whether we're looking to enter Japan or deal with the Great Resignation. someone is experiencing exactly the same problem. So the community, the ability to really help each other as part of the challenges that we're going through, it's extremely beneficial. And I'm pretty sure, Dan will talk about this as well, as I don't think it really matters, if you're a first year CMO or if you're, a 10th year CMO, right? It's we're all facing the same problems.
I love it. Okay. And Dan, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, Denise, you're right on. And, the way I look at this, and I love the idea of huddle, right? Like in football, they lean in, they're, listening intently, and what's the next play, right? On the football field. From a CMO perspective, if you lean in, it's a small group of CMOs that get together in these different pods, and you lean in and you learn a ton. And I've been doing this marketing thing for over 25 years, and I learn something new at every huddle. And it just also creates new friendships, right? Where you can go to those other CMOs and ask questions directly, have a separate one-on-one, and someone that has expertise in a certain area, and it's just super helpful. So yeah, I'm all in, and I really appreciate every one of the segments that you do, Drew. It's really helpful to me and my company.
I love it. Okay. Well, thank you both for everything you do for CMO Huddles. If you're a B2B CMO who can share, care, and dare with the best of them, visit cmohuddles.com or hit me up on LinkedIn to see if you qualify for a guest pass. All right, now we are at the point of the show where we're going to do our gin tasting. So we got to grab our chilled glasses and our gin. So we're going to play a video and we'll be right back.
A smart person learns from their mistakes. A wise person learns from other people's mistakes. There's great value in this CMO huddle.
This one has consistently brought value to the table. There's value at every step.
The continuity of familiar faces is also quite nice. You can start to form some deeper relationships.
It's a nice break in your week from a lot of other meetings.
None of us is as smart as all of us. Every huddle I go away with one idea that I didn't know before.
We have implemented a number of things that have made a significant amount of difference.
It's a really high caliber group of very passionate CMOs.
Share these best practices, but do it in a circle of trust.
It's an amazing group of people.
Jackie has constantly reminded me that we need a call to action on everything we do. So if you are a CMO that can share and care and dare with the best of them, visit cmohuddles.com. How's that for a call to action, Jackie? All right. We got some funky sound going, but that's cool. Melissa has joined us. Melissa, our producer, who's going to take us through the gin tasting. I am turning it over to you.
Hi, everyone. We have two gins from across the pond today, Heppel and Tanqueray gin. We're going to start with the Tanqueray because that's a classic one. So you kind of know what to expect. Got your glasses, go ahead and taste them. I'll give you a few facts. Tanqueray was first distilled in 1820 by Charles Tanqueray in the Bloomsbury district of London. And it's still made in the same still from 200 years ago, which has been nicknamed Old Tom and is Tanqueray's spiritual mascot for brand endurance. What do you think? Strong?
Yeah, it's, well, part of it, Denise, you're drinking it. I think you're not drinking it cold, but this is not a gin that I would want to drink straight. I don't know. Dan, what do you think?
I was quite happy with it straight, so I had no problem with it. It's to me, this was great. Especially, I've had a great week. We had our whole company offsite virtual for the past 3 days, and I just finished about an hour ago. So a timing of this type of drink is perfect.
There you go. Perfect.
All right.
So
Heppel.
Let's try Heppel. This is a newer gin. It was launched in 2015. It's also an English brand, and its botanicals are from Northumberland. They're all like locally sourced botanicals, and it's very juniper focused. So they not only have regular juniper, but they also have locally picked green juniper, which is not ripe and has a completely different taste from juniper. I'm really interested to know how this one tastes. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think it stays on your tongue a lot longer. The flavor stays with you. It may be the most juniper gin I've ever tasted.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I usually don't like juniper.
Well,
juniper gin.
That's a good question. To me, it's smoother. initially than the Tanqueray. It doesn't bite as hard, but
I'll just say that first taste of Tanqueray was really it just hit the mark. Let me just say that. The second one I think is more subtle, but I think I'm more used to the Tanqueray type of taste.
Yeah. Sorry, Denise, you were on mute. I didn't hear what you were saying.
No worries. I was going to say, so if you're like me, you probably like this one a little bit more because Dan likes it evidently very strong. And, for the folks that are not gin drinkers, it's a little bit like licorice aftertaste, which makes it a little bit easier to digest.
There you go. It actually does have licorice as one of the botanicals. So great nose there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to smell it.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, well, cool. Okay, so lots of crazy botanicals in this thing. Lavage? Lovage?
Heppel has lavage. I think that's how you pronounce it. It tastes and smells like celery and parsley. So if you taste any kind of green, then it's probably that. It's a bit more complex and intense. Its leaves are used as an herb in salads or for stews. Roots are used as a vegetable, and the seeds are used as a spice. It's very popular in Southern European cuisine. So the seeds could be used instead of fennel. And lavage is actually, in medieval times, the name is love ache. And ache is the medieval name for parsley. So it's like love parsley.
Okay, so love parsley, and we have that. Well, Melissa, thank you for this great tasting. Do we want to vote? Denise, you were, by the way, for people who've never seen Heppel, they are clearly telling you what the brand is about because it's all juniper all the time.
I would have voted Heppel. And by the way, Drew and Dan, I really think if you added like some spicy food with it, it would have been a really good combination.
Yeah.
Totally
All right, Dan, you're going to stick with your Tanqueray, man.
I got to do the Tanqueray and tonic, which is something that I've had and enjoyed over the years. So I'm more of a traditionalist, I guess, there. And that hit the spot. Thank you.
All right. Well, there's got to be a reason why they're one of the top global brands. So there you have it. Okay, Melissa, thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Melissa.
So, okay, that was fun. Now, and what the hardest part of the next half an hour is to just put that to the side and get back to the subject. So let's talk about, we talked a little bit about this process and so forth. You happen to work with an agency called Renegade for some of the research that we've talked about, but I really want to, and Denise, you mentioned you worked with The Economist, and let's talk about the importance of having an outside partner for a second on this, because I know, in theory, you guys could do this on your own. You're smart. You've done this, enough in your careers. What are the advantages of doing this? And we're going to break partners down. There are people that can help field the study, but there are people who can help you craft the study. And let's just talking about that.
Yeah, as you said, Drew, it's all about the packaging, right? And at the end, what you also have to look at is what are you trying to accomplish? So for us and using The Economist, we also wanted to get to higher C-level interviews as part of the output and get it and segment it out into more global environments, right? So Germany, UK, and get more of a global reach as part of it. And I felt that the other survey channel that we did with you was really to get to more low-code developers. And so it's accessing the right audience as well. And as Dan mentioned, right, part of it is the benefit is depending on who you're co-branding and sponsoring the market research with, you also have the opportunity to then get picked up by media as part of the process. So we knew that we were putting together a little bit of an analysis of what is the real relationship, right, between IT and the business. And is IT in the hot seat? So in order to validate something like that, we knew that we needed a larger sponsorship with these, with somebody like The Economist. And by the way, like very similar to Dan, that got picked up by Forbes on its release. And so I think sometimes when we look at market research, we go, oh, we put it up behind a landing page. We look at the number of downloads. We try to see if it ties to an attribution for demand gen. But sometimes just the market awareness and getting picked up by media is enough in itself.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things I want to just sort of unpack there, and then I never want to use the word unpack again. The Economist, and if you partnering with a media company, first of all, it's probably smart to call it a sponsorship because it is. But the advantage is they bring tremendous credibility and they bring an audience that they can pull, they can go out and find it. Because you may not realize, depending on the study that you're doing, how hard it is to reach the people that you want to reach. And so with The Economist calling and them doing it, so you get reach already and you get credibility. And that is something that's hard to buy when you do an independent study. But in both cases, you can get this PR value. This is extended PR value. And so Dan, in the study that we did together, obviously you didn't partner with an economist because, as much as Renegade is a wonderful little company, we are not a globally known thought leader.
Yeah. And, we one, to your point, you really can't do this yourself, right? You can't go do this survey and publish it. It doesn't have any credibility, right? So you have to go work with a respected third party. And I believe Renegade is a respected third party. And we put your logo on this benchmarking report to make sure people knew that, hey, we just didn't come up with this ourselves. This is real, right? And I think that's important when you publish this type of research, that it's not just coming from you. So, we felt it would be great to have Renegade and partner with Renegade. You did the work with us. And, we then shared this with our marketing audience, and the response was fantastic. But we've done other primary research. We did one with an analyst firm like ESG. We've done some with Forrester, right? And that's a different type of respected third party. And then we just did another cybersecurity one with Dark Reading, right? A very well-respected publication in the cybersecurity space. So we do multiple surveys and publish multiple reports to try to get the word out to the various customers that we serve. And having that third party, neutrality, and to make sure that it's legitimate is really, really, really important. And then, the other piece of this, which I'm sure we're going to get to, is once we have this research, then we turn it into 100 different other assets that are more, biteable, more easily reviewed and used for social media and our marketing efforts and campaigns. So this is a basis of, as Denise brought up earlier on, a major campaign to go educate the market. And you do this research, you can replicate it 100 different ways, and it really gives you a lot of value that way when you break it out and share it in that format.
And I do want to get to that, but before we do it, as I was thinking about you talking about the partners, I'm thinking Economist and Forrester. There's is there a point where you lose control? Like, one of the advantages of, say, working with a smaller, less famous place is that you have a lot more input. I'm curious, how does it work when you have an Economist or a Forrester in terms of your control of the research?
I'll give my view of working with the analyst firm. You're right. They, have to ensure that it is legitimate, and that's a great thing, right? And then they've done these over and over again. They know the audience. They gave us a perspective that we really didn't think about going into it. So we learned a lot during the process, and I think it was really helpful. I don't really think it took anything away from what we were trying to understand and learn. I think it made it better, to be perfectly honest. And to have those type of experts who've done this many, many times over and over again was really, really helpful to us.
Yeah, and look, let's face it. I mean, those guys do this for a living, and they know the potential outcome and the business value, not only of the information that they're providing, but the logo that they're providing along with it, right? The credibility. And Denise, any, we talked about The Economist, but in terms of their shaping the study and and in a sense, because the way you do the study can really define what you learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to, Dan's point, they do lend the expertise as part of this, right? You do have a little bit less flexibility because sometimes they want the questions to be a certain way, and you have to kind of compromise in the configuration of the questions. Though, always the access to the raw data is something that we reuse across all the markets as part of it.
Very cool. Okay. Let's see, where are we in the show? Oh, we're at the moment where we ask, what would Ben Franklin say? And, just a little trivia fact, when Ben died in 1790, he owned over 4,000 books. It was the largest library in North America. He was one who definitely appreciated learning and knowledge and study. So he would say about this, knowledge and learning is to be cultivated, and ignorance dissipated. And there you have it. Well, thank you, Ben, for that. Okay. So Dan, you started to talk about this, and I want to get at this, which is, there's a lot of belief out there, and I've heard this over and over again from certain pundits, that nobody reads long documents anymore. Nobody, wants white papers anymore. And I know it is categorically untrue because, in the beginning of the pandemic, we put a 15,000 word blog post on our website, and that thing is still getting hundreds of visits a day. And, people are spending 4 to 5 minutes. Now, it really takes 7 minutes to read the whole thing, so they're not finished, but 4 minutes is a long time in internet time. So, but Dan, you talked about, being able to slice and dice this thing. You have the long report. Talk a little bit specifically about some of the ways that you find the bite-sized units and how you use these longer reports.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the key learnings that come from it, right? And then if you can share that in a newsletter, share that in a social media post, share that in an infographic, or actually do a webinar about all the things you learned during the survey and the results that were taken. Break it up 100 different ways, and the consumer and the business leader is in control, right? They want to get access to learn about your company and your solution the way they want to get access to that data. And it could be a long report that they want to read and bring back to the team, or it could be a bite-sized one-pager that they get a quick summary of and go, wow, this is really impactful to me. This could really help me and my team. You have to deliver it in so many different ways that the customer who you're trying to serve, you make it easy for them to consume it the way they want to consume it. And since there's so many different options today and they're in control when they come to your website, you want to offer it to them in the way that makes the most sense to them. And that's why breaking it up into blog posts and other things that I mentioned that make it easy for them to get to the information as quickly as they can really helps them along their customer journey. And that's where you prove value, right? I make sure everything that we produce has value to the customer, and that helps them do their job better, that helps them protect their company, that helps them better in their career. And when we always look at it that way, everything we produce has to have meaning. And that's why we're really considerate of how we go publish all these different aspects.
And it's funny, we didn't actually design the report, but I do remember a research study that we did, somebody else not too long ago, we created an infographic of sort of the highlights of the thing. And that's just one example of a way of getting the information that was particularly good for the press, but also very good for social sharing as well. Just at where's the numbers, or you just pull some of the numbers and tell some of the story to get the headlines out there. Denise, in terms of slicing and dicing, I know the one study, the low code study, just really came out recently. But what about you in terms of extending the value of this and of the short form versions?
Yeah, and absolutely agree with Dan, right? It's all about the audience or the persona. And so if typically we see on the business side, it needs to be shorter as part of it. The more technical IT folks will read the longer form. So you want multiple options. And then I think there's another interesting component, which is the markets that you're marketing into, like physical markets. We find that in Europe, as well as in Australia, people love to read long forms. One of the best, prospects we had last year was in Australia. And by the way, the first thing they downloaded was a white paper. It was our longest piece of content. And by the way, it was an IT technical person downloading it, and it took us 14 days from the time they came to our web to when it was actually converted to a qualified lead. So I think that it's really important that, as Dan mentioned, to bite size, to think about the personas that you have, and then as you're building the content, you want to be able to slice it based on the persona and think about the overall journey as part of it, right? So are there, if it's a longer form, maybe it's part of the research that's top of the funnel. If it's a bite size, or you may pull a case study out of your white paper, that could be used later on as you're further down the funnel as part of the overall process. So I think that you cannot get away with just, hey, you print the market research once and you're done. You have to think about the size, you have to think about the persona, and then you have to think about the markets that you're serving.
And so, well, one quick question for both of you. Let's imagine there is the study, the official study itself, gated or ungated?
It depends. It depends. All right. It depends.
Ungated?
It depends. Like for us, blogs are not worth the gating because it's a short one. But if you're
a research study in your mind is worth gating.
Yeah, completely. And long form as part of it, yes.
Okay. Dan?
We've made the choice to not gate anything. I don't know if that's the right answer, but we just want to give and educate the market as much as we can. So we want to get it in the hands of as many people as we can. And that's been the approach. And we'll continue to evaluate it. But Denise, you're making a great point. And, it's something that we will continue to think about.
Yeah, I'd love to see us side by side, because my opinion is don't gate it and a research study. And the reason is, if the value is there, they'll circle back. But what you do when you gate it is you reduce the number of downloads because it's annoying.
Yeah. And by the way, you can think about also in two separate ways, right? Like when I look at the experience of somebody coming potentially inbound onto our web, it most likely is someone that is new to Appian. So typically there is a gated structure as part of the overall process. Now, if they're part of our community and they're already logged into our community, all of our thought leadership is also replicated within the community, not gated. So I think that you need to really think about the multiple channels that you have. Think holistically about your entire, site system or sitemap, and then the variations of the content. And then where will people go given their, existing customer versus prospect?
Okay. One of the things we like to do on the show is to give people really sort of guidelines. We've talked a lot about the importance of getting the survey right, of testing it, massaging it. We've talked about a third-party partner to help sort of both validate the methodology, but also bring credibility. What we haven't talked about is cost at all. And again, without speaking to any specific in giving away anything proprietary, because we've talked about high-end economist or Forrester study and analyst study. If I am thinking about doing a market research study that I want to take to my can you give any parameters for them from a budgeting standpoint to think about what something like this will cost? Obviously, you got to market the marketing and everything, but just doing the study. Anything, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I think I take a very simplistic view is if this even brings in one new customer, right, it more than pays itself, multiple times, right? And if you're trying to go educate the market, this to me is one of the best ways to go do it. And educate yourself as a company and as a marketer and as a CMO. This is one of the best investments you can make.
Okay. So I like the answer, but it wasn't exactly the answer that I was looking for. And I don't want to put you on the spot. And Denise, I don't know if you can provide a budget range.
Sure. So look, I think, we had the experience of doing something with Polefish, right? Where we actually looked at the number of folks that would respond on a survey. And depending on if you're looking at 500 versus about 700 respondents, you could get through leveraging like a Polefish to do this in 50, 75K. So that could be part of the baseline budget. If you're going to go to a sponsorship with an economist, HBR, Oxford Economics, and again, it depends on the number of questions and length, but at minimum, you're looking at least 200K.
Okay. And that's really helpful. And I'm going to break it down a little bit more. And just for folks understand, so there are these panel companies like a Polefish. We've also worked with Propeller Insights. SurveyMonkey has panels that are pretty helpful in reaching consumers. But these folks will, you can set up the survey on their platform. They will take care of the job of reaching out in getting the people and paying them and all so forth. Those are the range of those. End up anywhere from, I'm going to say, $100 an individual to it could be $500, depending on how difficult it is. And so again, you start to multiply that by the number of people that you're working with. That's part one. That's just getting to the people. Then the next part to think about the cost is the cost of actually designing the study itself. And you're going to need a third party to help you with that. And then there is the marketing of this. So think about it, but you're going to probably spend in man hours, even if you try to do it, you can field a study on Propellerfish for, $10,000. That's just the cost of Propellerfish. You've got to design the study. You got to write up the report. And I just wanted to make sure that you had parameters on that as you're thinking about a study like that. But the value, again, this is why you need to slice and dice it. All right, we're getting towards the end here because I've been talking too much. But Denise, final words of wisdom for CMOs thinking about doing market research. And this is the first time and we're going to call it this newsworthy, buzzworthy market research.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Drew, and as Dan iterated, it is a must within your B2B marketing mix. The question always is, what are you trying to prove? Or, what is your hypothesis to start? And then you want to be able to prove something as part of the market research. And then how do you measure success? It's always easy to do a market research, but is the goal to drive demand gen? Is the goal to drive awareness? And having that as part of the setup and really thinking about, the impact of the market research will then enable you to really look at it and then, figure out how to get to the various personas, long form, short form, and all of the components that is needed. And as you think about the market research, what we really look at is how does it fit into our overall integrated plan? Could we take the results of the market research and put it into a keynote, for example, with our CEO at our user group? Could we come in and pass it along to, some of our strategic customers for account-based marketing? There's a lot of things to think about, but you need to think about it as an integrated approach, not just as, I'm going to go out and do a market research piece. And, whether it's an analyst or, third party like the economist or even, with the survey process, and then that's a check mark and that nothing happens with it, right? It has to be part of an overall integrated plan.
Yeah, I really think that the word that I kept thinking about while you were talking was tentpole, that these studies can be tentpoles for a massive, at least a full quarter's worth of a marketing campaign. Okay, Dan, anything else? Last licks.
I would just say what Denise said is absolutely right on, spot on. The only thing I would add is don't rush into this. Like, think it through. Come up with a plan. Give yourself time to reiterate and iterate and keep going through the different questions with the experts, so you can really get this as right as possible. It'll always come back and say, oh, I wish I would have asked this, or I wish I've asked that. And if you rush it, you're definitely going to have that issue multiple times. So take your time with it, do it right, find the right partner, invest in it in the right way. But build a plan around it, like you said, a tent pole, so that you can go leverage it 100 different ways.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you both, Denise and Dan. You're great sports. Thank you for the audience for staying with us. Please join us in 2 weeks when we'll be talking about recruiting during the Great Resignation with Allison Monroe, Jamie Walker, and Kristen Fornal. Let's cue the music. Renegade Marketers Live is produced by Melissa Caffrey. Our intern is Laura Parkin. Our botanical expert is Nicole Hernandez. For show notes, past episodes, and the latest on my new book, Renegade Marketing, 12 Steps to Building Unbeatable B2B Brands, please visit renegade.com. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, and until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.